Here's a detailed overview of the Russia-Ukraine war. 1. Background and causes. Historical context. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union until its collapse in 1991. After independence, Ukraine leaned toward Europe and NATO, while Russia wanted to keep it within its sphere of influence. Crimea annexation, 2014. Russia annexed Crimea after Ukraine's pro-Russian president Yanukovych was ousted by protests. This move was condemned internationally. Donbas conflict, 2014 to 2022. Pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk, fought Ukrainian forces, with Russia providing covert support. NATO expansion fear. Russia opposed Ukraine's desire to join NATO, viewing it as a security threat. 2. Invasion of 2022. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, calling it a special military operation. Initial goals: rapid capture of Kyiv, the capital, toppling Ukraine's government, installing a pro-Russian regime. Initial outcome: Russian forces advanced quickly but faced fierce resistance. Kyiv was not captured. Russia retreated from northern Ukraine by April 2022. 3. Key phases of the war. Battle for Kyiv, Feb-April 2022. Russia attempted to encircle Kyiv. Ukrainian resistance, supported by Western weapons like Javelin missiles, forced Russia to withdraw. B. Eastern and Southern Offensive, mid-2022. Russia captured large parts of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions. Declared annexation of these areas in September 2022, though not recognized internationally. C. Ukrainian counteroffensives, late 2022. Ukraine recaptured Kharkiv region, September 2022. Russia withdrew from Kherson City, November 2022. D. Stalemate and trench warfare, 2023 to 2024. Both sides dug into fortified positions, especially in the Donbas. Heavy battles around Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Robotyne. Use of drones, missiles, and artillery intensified. 4. International dimension. Ukraine's allies, US, EU, NATO countries supplied billions of dollars in weapons, intelligence, and aid. Russia's allies, limited support from Belarus, Iran, drones, and North Korea, ammunition. China remained neutral, but increased trade with Russia. Sanctions. Western nations imposed heavy sanctions on Russia, targeting banks, oil, gas, and oligarchs. Humanitarian impact. Casualties. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers killed or wounded on both sides, exact numbers disputed. Civilians, tens of thousands killed, widespread destruction of cities like Mariupol and Bakhmut. Refugees, over 8 million Ukrainians fled abroad, millions more displaced internally. 6. Current situation as of 2025. Frontlines remain largely unchanged since late 2023. Russia controls about 18% of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. Ukraine continues drone and missile strikes inside Russia, like in Belgorod, Crimea, and even near Moscow. Russia uses missile and drone strikes on Ukrainian cities, targeting energy infrastructure. Peace talks have not made progress. Both sides aim for military advantage before negotiations. 7. Future scenarios. Prolonged stalemate. War continues with high casualties and little territorial change. Negotiated settlement. Possible if international pressure increases, but disputes over territory make this hard. Escalation. Risk of NATO-Russia confrontation if fighting spills into alliance territory. Practical, phased solution framework for the Russia-Ukraine war. Below, I give a realistic, sequenced peace framework that tries to balance military realities, Ukraine's sovereignty, Russian security concerns, as stated, and international law, plus concrete steps for verification, reconstruction, and accountability. I'll also flag key risks and trade-offs. Where I make claims about recent developments or proposals, I'll cite reliable sources. Overarching principle. A durable peace must provide 1. An immediate halt to life-threatening escalation. 2. Credible security guarantees and verification. 3. A political path that respects core Ukrainian sovereignty and internationally recognized borders over time. 4. Accountability for war crimes. And 5. A funded reconstruction plan, sequenced so each party has incentives to keep commitments. Phased roadmap, high level. Phase A. Immediate emergency measures, days, weeks. 1. Ceasefire with monitoring. An immediate, verifiable ceasefire along front lines with OSCE UN monitors and a transparent incident reporting mechanism. 2. Protect nuclear sites and critical infrastructure. International teams, IAEA involvement to secure plants like Zaporizhia and restore offsite power. This is urgent to avoid catastrophic risk. Reuters 3. Humanitarian windows. Agreed corridors for civilians, medical supplies, and prisoner exchanges supervised by the ICRC-UN. Phase B. Stabilization and confidence building, weeks, months. 1. Mutual withdrawal of heavy weapons from agreed buffer zones with phased timelines and geolocated verification, satellite plus on-the-ground monitors. Use stepwise measures so compliance by one side unlocks concessions by the other. 2. International peacekeeping presence, temporary. A UN OSCE force with a clear mandate to secure the buffer zone while political talks proceed. The force should be multinational and acceptable to both parties. 3. Freeze on territorial consolidation. No formal recognition of territorial changes made by force while talks continue, reaffirming international law norms and preventing fait accompli. Relevant because earlier agreements, e.g., Minsk, collapsed in part over such disputes. Wikipedia Phase C. Political negotiation, months, 1 to 2 years. 4. High-level talks under neutral mediation. A mediation format could include a UN special envoy and parties acceptable to both sides, possible roles for Turkey, Switzerland, or a Normandy plus UN hybrid. Past talks have tried different formats. Any successful track will need trust building and sequencing. Wikipedia 2. Security architecture guarantees. Options include a legally binding neutrality, limited non-alignment status for Ukraine, multi-party security guarantees, US-EU countries, or a European security treaty that addresses Russian concerns while protecting Ukrainian sovereignty. Guarantees should be verifiable and backed by international law. 5. Transitional arrangements for disputed areas. Time-bound special local governance arrangements with Ukrainian sovereignty preserved, subject to international monitoring and later local elections under OSCE rules, only if and when security and legal conditions permit. Phase D. Long-term settlement, justice, reconstruction, 2+ years. 1. Final status and timeline for contested territories. Ideally a settlement that ends with confirmed Ukrainian sovereignty over internationally recognized territory. For Crimea, there are extremely difficult legal and political issues. Options include negotiated return, long transition with international monitoring, or international arbitration compensation mechanisms. 2. Accountability. Independent international investigations and prosecutions for war crimes, e.g. ICC coordinated tribunals, paired with restorative justice and truth commissions to enable reconciliation. 3. Reconstruction and reparations. A large international reconstruction package, grants plus loans, potentially using frozen Russian assets, income, or legally structured loans reparation mechanisms to fund rebuilding while respecting legal and financial constraints. Recent EU discussions show countries are exploring using frozen assets to support Ukraine's long-term needs. AP News. Verification and enforcement mechanisms, must-haves. Multimodal verification combines satellite imagery, on-the-ground monitors, UN OSCE, electronic geolocation of heavy weapons, and third-party inspections, IAEA for nuclear. Stepwise incentives. Each verified compliance action should unlock aid, sanctions relief, withdrawal steps, or political concessions. Dispute resolution panel. Standing international panel to adjudicate alleged violations quickly. Enforceable consequences. Clearly defined and credibly enforceable consequences. Targeted sanctions, suspension of benefits, or legal action if parties flagrantly violate commitments. Political trade-offs and risks. Russia's insistence on security guarantees versus Ukraine's desire for full sovereignty and NATO prospects. Any compromise on neutrality or NATO aspirations would be politically fraught in Kyiv and the West, but a security architecture providing ironclad guarantees could be an alternative. Historical formats, Minsk, Normandy, failed partly because sequencing and mutual trust collapsed. Wikipedia. Crimea remains the hardest issue. Many proposals avoid immediate resolution, leaving it unresolved risks perpetual instability. Effective solutions require creative legal and political tools, e.g., long transition with rights protections plus international guarantees, but every option has high political costs. Enforcement credibility. If the international community cannot credibly enforce consequences, agreements will be fragile. Concrete short-term proposal you could advocate for. Political practical. 1. Push for an urgent UN-backed ceasefire, coupled with an IAEA priority mission to Zaporizhia and other nuclear sites. Human lives, nuclear safety create moral and practical urgency. Reuters 2. Negotiate a time-limited buffer zone with an international monitoring force and a calendar for phased withdrawal of heavy weapons. 2. Start parallel talks on A. Security guarantees, and B. Post-war reconstruction funded via international mechanisms, including using interest on frozen assets as a bridge while legal issues are resolved. The EU and partners are already weighing options around frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. AP News. Why this approach is realistic. It sequences security, ceasefire plus monitors, before politically explosive concessions, reducing incentives to break the deal. It relies on international institutions, UN, OSCE, IAEA, to provide legitimacy and technical verification. It ties reconstruction funding to compliance, giving tangible incentives for maintaining peace. Final note, what would make a deal durable? Durability requires credible verification, enforceable international guarantees, inclusive political processes inside Ukraine, so Ukrainians feel the settlement protects their rights, genuine reparations and reconstruction funding, and mechanisms for accountability. History, e.g. Minsk, shows deals collapse when sequencing is wrong, verification is weak, or incentives to cheat are strong, so the design has to make compliance in each step in both sides' interest.